Hey guys, tonight we're drifting back to ancient Rome, a city of marble, lamps, and quiet streets where even the act of sleep was a carefully cultivated art. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine flickering oil lamps casting soft shadows across stone floors, the faint scent of chamomile and lavender lingering in the air, and gentle attendants preparing baths and herbal infusions for the evening. Here, in these quiet hours, long before alarm clocks, white noise machines, or warm pajamas, the Romans were already experimenting with the science and art of restorative sleep. Sleep in ancient Rome was far from trivial. For the elite, it was an orchestrated nightly ritual, combining herbal elixirs, baths, environmental adjustments, and meticulous observation. Herbs like valerian root, chamomile, mint, and poppy, many still recognized for their calming properties today, were blended into carefully measured elixirs to ease the body into rest. Sometimes honey or warm wine was added, improving taste and promoting absorption. These mixtures were more than simple remedies. They were part of a sophisticated system designed to guarantee uninterrupted, restorative sleep. Bathing, of course, was central to the ritual. Heated baths infused with fragrant oils relaxed tense muscles, while gentle massage improved circulation. Attendants carefully monitored the temperature of the water, applied oils with attentive hands, and adjusted the bathing routine to individual preferences. Even minor details, from the placement of pillows to the warmth of blankets, were considered essential. The Romans recognized that the tiniest discomfort could disturb sleep, and their attention to such nuances shows an impressive intuitive understanding of human physiology long before formal science existed.
Children and young heirs were not exempt. Their nightly routines were adapted to their delicate constitutions. Milder herbal infusions, shorter baths, and additional monitoring ensured comfort. Dreams were sometimes noted by attendants or family members, interpreted as subtle guidance for character, temperament, or even future choices. Even households of modest means adapted simplified versions, chamomile teas, quiet sleeping spaces, and careful attention to bedding arrangements ensured that the benefits of restorative rest extended across social classes. Mystical and symbolic elements played a subtle but meaningful role. Certain herbs, charms, or flower arrangements were thought to protect against nightmares, encourage pleasant dreams, or attract divine favor. While modern audiences may view these elements as superstitious, they illustrate an early recognition of psychological comfort and reassurance. Ritual, symbolic protection, and environmental cues all contributed to the effectiveness of sleep, blending mind and body in harmonious rest. Even in military contexts, sleep was carefully managed. Soldiers stationed far from home relied on simpler versions of the Roman sleep pharmacy: herbal infusions, mats, blankets, and environmental adjustments. While baths were often impractical, washing, herbal teas, and careful attention to bedding provided essential restorative rest. The universality of these practices underscores a fundamental understanding. Sleep is vital, whether one is a patrician in a villa or a soldier on the frontier. Diet, exercise, and rhythm were all integral to these practices. Evening meals were light, avoiding overindulgence. Vigorous activity was completed during the day. Baths and elixirs were carefully timed. Windows and curtains moderated natural light. Lamps were dimmed gradually, and ambient sounds, from fountains to gentle breezes, were curated to support calm. These practices reflect an intuitive awareness of circadian rhythms and the influence of environmental cues on sleep quality centuries before such concepts were scientifically formalized.
Roman sleep was also informed by philosophical reflection. Stoic and Epicurean teachings emphasized moderation, mindfulness, and attentiveness to bodily needs. Overindulgence in sleep was discouraged, as was neglect. Balance was paramount. Sleep was therefore not merely restorative, but cultivated, a state of equilibrium connecting body, mind, and environment. Romans approached it with the same deliberation they applied to law, architecture, and medicine. Attendants played a critical role in maintaining this equilibrium. They observed breathing, posture, and subtle movements to detect restlessness. Adjustments were made quietly, repositioning a pillow, offering a sip of an herbal infusion, or adding a blanket, all without disturbing the sleeper's calm. These subtle interventions reveal a remarkably sophisticated understanding. Sleep is fragile and must be managed delicately. Dreams were another focus. Pleasant dreams were seen as evidence of physical and mental balance. Disturbing dreams prompted adjustments to elixirs, sensory inputs, or bedtime routines. Elite families sometimes consulted philosophers or dream interpreters, integrating subjective experiences into their understanding of health and well-being. In this way, sleep was recognized as an active, dynamic state, influenced by both environment and mind. By the time dawn approached, citizens who followed these practices awoke with renewed clarity, emotional stability, and physical energy. Sleep, carefully orchestrated through baths, elixirs, environment, and attentive observation, had achieved its purpose: restoration of body and mind. The Roman sleep pharmacy was more than a collection of remedies. It was an institution that maintained physical health, mental clarity, and cultural refinement.
The legacy of these practices is remarkable. Modern readers can still appreciate the core principles: attention to environment, sensory awareness, diet, timing, and routine all enhance sleep quality. The Romans treated sleep as an art to be cultivated, observed, and respected, a lesson that remains relevant to this day. As Rome settled into the hush of night, the faint scents of herbs and oils lingered. Beds were aligned with care, and attentive hands ensured that every citizen, elite or commoner, experienced restorative rest. In this, the Romans demonstrate a timeless truth. Sleep, when guided thoughtfully, is more than a biological necessity. It is a cultivated practice, bridging mind, body, and culture in subtle, enduring harmony.
Baths, herbs, and the art of nightly preparation. As night settled over Rome, the city quieted into a gentle rhythm. The flicker of oil lamps illuminated marble halls, and the scent of herbs lingered faintly in the air. In elite households, evening was a carefully orchestrated prelude to rest, a time when baths, herbs, and subtle rituals worked in concert to prepare the body and mind for sleep. Baths were more than hygiene. They were a nightly meditation, a practice of sensory preparation. Heated water infused with oils like lavender, myrtle, and chamomile relaxed muscles and soothed nerves. Attendants monitored temperature and motion, ensuring the bather's comfort and the gradual easing of tension. Gentle massage promoted circulation, while the aroma of the oils triggered psychological relaxation. Every action, from pouring water to adjusting pillows, was part of an intricate, almost ceremonial routine, signaling the body that the day's labors were complete. Herbal elixirs complemented the bath. Valerian root, poppy, chamomile, mint, carefully measured, were steeped or mixed into soothing potions. Honey or warm wine was sometimes added for taste and absorption. Timing and dosage were critical. Taken too early, the effects might disrupt evening conversation or social obligations. Too late, and the sleeper could awaken groggy or disoriented. Roman attendants and apothecaries monitored reactions carefully, making subtle adjustments based on individual constitution and temperament. The integration of herbs and baths was paired with environmental orchestration. Curtains were drawn to soften incoming moonlight, lamps dimmed to create a calm ambiance. Subtle sounds, like the distant flow of water or faint rustle of leaves in courtyards, provided a consistent auditory backdrop. Even the temperature of rooms was considered. A chill could disturb muscles, and excessive warmth might cause restlessness. Romans understood that sleep was fragile, and that the minutest environmental factor could disrupt the delicate balance of rest.
Children and young heirs received particular care. Shorter baths, milder herbal infusions, and extra attention to bedding ensured comfort and safety. Dreams were sometimes observed and noted, interpreted for signs of temperament, future inclinations, or emotional well-being. This attention to youthful sleep reflects a recognition of the formative importance of rest, a practice that shaped habits and sensitivity throughout life. The practice of sleep was not limited to elite households. Soldiers stationed in distant outposts, merchants, and common citizens adapted these principles pragmatically. Simple herbal infusions, careful bedding, and attention to noise and light provided restorative rest, demonstrating that the core principles of the Roman sleep pharmacy were universally valued. Even in modest contexts, sleep was treated as a cultivated state, requiring preparation and attentiveness. Mystical and symbolic practices persisted alongside practical interventions. Amulets, flower arrangements, or carefully placed herbs were believed to influence dreams, guard against nightmares, and attract divine favor. While modern readers might consider these elements superstitious, they reflect a psychological insight. Ritual, symbolism, and reassurance can profoundly affect mental states even during sleep.
These practices illustrate the Romans' early awareness of the mind-body connection long before the term existed. Diet and daily rhythm were carefully aligned with sleep preparation. Evening meals were light. Vigorous physical activity ended earlier in the day. Baths and elixirs were timed for maximal effect. This attention to timing demonstrates an intuitive understanding of circadian principles. The Romans noticed that the body's natural rhythms could be guided and enhanced, and they tailored nightly routines accordingly.
Observation played a central role. Attendants watched breathing, posture, and subtle movements to detect restlessness or discomfort. Adjustments were made quietly, repositioning a pillow, adding a blanket, offering a sip of herbal infusion without disturbing the sleeper's calm. Such interventions reveal a sophisticated understanding. Sleep is fragile, and careful management preserves its restorative qualities. Dreams continued to hold cultural significance. Pleasant dreams were interpreted as signs of mental and physical balance. Disturbing dreams prompted adjustments to bedtime routines or elixir mixtures. Philosophers and attendants sometimes acted as interpreters, bridging the subjective experience of sleep with practical interventions. This approach underscores the Romans' understanding that sleep was not passive, it was dynamic, influenced by body, mind, environment, and ritual. Philosophy also shaped sleep culture. Stoic teachings emphasized moderation and self-awareness, while Epicurean thought encouraged calm and avoidance of excess. Overindulgence in sleep was discouraged, as was neglect. Balance was essential. Sleep became an intentional, cultivated state, connecting physical restoration with mental equilibrium. The act of rest was treated with the same deliberation as governance, medicine, and architecture. By the early hours of night, the results of these practices were evident. Well-prepared citizens, whether in patrician villas or modest apartments, experienced deeper, more restorative sleep. Their bodies relaxed, minds were calm, and subtle rituals ensured continuity of rest. Even the simplest measures, a warm bath, a sip of herbal tea, and gentle attention to bedding could transform the quality of sleep.
The legacy of these practices extends far beyond Rome. Modern readers can recognize core principles: attention to environment, sensory awareness, timing, diet, and routine enhances sleep quality. Romans understood that rest was a cultivated, observed, and respected state. Sleep, orchestrated with care and subtlety, achieved both physical restoration and psychological balance. As night progressed across the city, the effects of these preparations continued quietly. Rooms were still and fragrant. Attendants monitored from the shadows, and citizens slept peacefully, supported by centuries of accumulated wisdom. The art of nightly preparation, baths, herbs, environmental adjustments, and attentive care demonstrates a timeless truth. Restorative sleep is deliberate, delicate, and deeply human. By morning, those who followed these practices awoke restored, their bodies energized, their minds clear. Sleep had fulfilled its purpose, not only as rest, but as a cultivated, guided state, ensuring readiness for the challenges of the day.
In this way, the Roman sleep pharmacy was more than remedies and rituals. It was a holistic, systematic approach to human well-being, blending observation, philosophy, and culture into the simple and profound act of rest.
As night deepened over the city, Rome became a tapestry of muted sounds and gentle light. The subtle flicker of lamps, the soft rustle of leaves in courtyards, and the faint fragrance of herbs created an atmosphere carefully attuned to rest. For the Romans, sleep was never merely the absence of activity. It was a cultivated, deliberate state, shaped by attention to every sensory detail. The elite paid meticulous attention to smell. Fragrant oils, lavender, myrtle, chamomile, and rose were diffused through rooms or added to baths. Herbs were sometimes tucked beneath pillows or scattered across bedding, releasing calming aromas throughout the night. Even the faint scent of beeswax from candles was considered, as it could subtly influence mood and perception. Romans recognized that olfactory cues could guide relaxation, signaling the mind that it was time to rest. Sight, too, was carefully managed. Curtains softened moonlight, lamps were dimmed to avoid harsh illumination, and polished surfaces reflected gentle glows rather than glare. In some households, colored glass or decorative screens modulated light further, creating spaces that felt intimate and secure. Shadows were not feared, but orchestrated. Soft darkness encouraged the body to release tension and prepared the mind for sleep. Sound played a similarly important role. The city itself was a patchwork of muted noises, distant fountains, the soft neighing of horses, and the occasional footstep echoing on cobblestones. Within homes, the Romans often added gentle enhancements, a subtle trickle of water from an indoor fountain, or the faint hum of a lute. These sounds, constant yet unobtrusive, provided a steady auditory backdrop, allowing the mind to drift effortlessly into restorative rest. The feel of the sleeping environment was also central. Bedding was selected for comfort, with layers of linen, wool, or down cushions. Pillows supported posture and relaxed muscles, while blankets maintained ideal warmth. Temperature was carefully monitored. A room that was too cold could stiffen limbs, while excessive warmth might induce restlessness. Even the tactile quality of clothing, night garments, and undersheets was considered, as discomfort in touch could disrupt the fragile state of sleep. Taste, though less prominent, also contributed indirectly. Herbal teas, warm wine, or honeyed elixirs taken before bed not only induced mild sedation, but also created a sense of ritualized indulgence. These beverages became signals to the body. The day's labors are complete, and it is time to surrender to rest. The Romans understood that such rituals, while simple, could profoundly influence the body's readiness for sleep. Attention to routine reinforced these sensory cues. Baths, meals, elixirs, and environmental adjustments followed a predictable schedule. The predictability itself was comforting. The human mind, even 2 millennia ago, appreciated the reassurance of order. As each step was taken, bathing, herbal infusion, dimming lights, the body and mind were guided into a state increasingly receptive to rest. Dreams were considered an important aspect of nightly experience. While some Roman rituals aimed simply to calm the body, others sought to influence the mind's wandering. Certain herbs were believed to encourage pleasant dreams, while arrangements of flowers or amulets warded off nightmares. Attendants or philosophers occasionally recorded dreams, interpreting them for health, temperament, or guidance. Modern psychology might recognize these practices as early forms of cognitive behavioral influence, preparing the mind for mental balance during sleep. Sleep rituals were adapted to different social classes. Elite households had elaborate baths, specialized attendants, and finely curated sensory environments. Soldiers and merchants in simpler settings replicated core principles: warm water, herbal infusions, careful bedding, and attention to ambient light and sound. These adaptations demonstrate the universality of Roman understanding. Restorative sleep was a necessity, and it could be optimized regardless of wealth or status. Even small details were not ignored. The gentle adjustment of a pillow, the placement of a candle to prevent harsh glare, or the careful monitoring of temperature and sound all contributed to sleep quality. The Romans recognized that sleep was a delicate equilibrium influenced by numerous subtle factors, and they cultivated this equilibrium with attentiveness and precision.
Philosophical reflection informed these practices as well. Stoicism emphasized moderation, awareness, and internal calm, while Epicurean thought encouraged pleasure tempered by reason. Sleep was not a passive indulgence, but an intentional, cultivated state, an equilibrium of body, mind, and environment. Overindulgence or neglect disrupted balance. Careful preparation preserved it. In this way, Roman sleep culture merged practical intervention with philosophical insight, crafting an experience both restorative and intellectually harmonious. Observation and adaptation were continuous. Attendants noted restlessness, adjusted bedding, modified herbal infusions, and even refined room temperature. Dreams and sleep patterns were occasionally recorded, enabling subtle feedback and improvement. Sleep, for the Romans, was an active process, a state of delicate attentiveness where ritual, environment, and human observation converged. As night progressed, these practices bore fruit. Citizens awoke feeling renewed, their bodies relaxed, their minds calm. Even simple interventions, warm baths, herbal teas, quiet rooms, could dramatically enhance rest. The cumulative effect of careful attention to all 5 senses ensured that sleep was restorative, predictable, and beneficial. The legacy of this sensory orchestration extends far beyond ancient Rome. Modern sleep research confirms many of these principles. Dim lighting, consistent bedtime routines, soothing scents, comfortable bedding, and calming sounds improve sleep quality. In this sense, the Romans' meticulous care was not just cultural ritual, it was proto-science, a careful study of the human body and mind in the service of restorative rest. By dawn, the streets of Rome began to stir, but in countless homes, the results of attentive, sensory-guided sleep were apparent. Minds were clear, bodies were refreshed, and the subtle rituals of the night had achieved their purpose. Sleep, orchestrated with care and intelligence, had preserved health, balance, and well-being, a practice worth understanding and emulating, even 2 millennia later.
As the Roman night deepened, homes across the city settled into a delicate stillness. The soft flicker of lamps, the faint scent of herbs, and the careful orchestration of daily routines converged to prepare both body and mind for the essential act of sleep. For the Romans, sleep was a cultivated art, blending ritual, observation, and subtle interventions to nurture restorative rest. Dreams were a central aspect of nightly experience. Romans believed that the mind during sleep revealed truths, glimpses of temperament, and subtle guidance for future choices. In elite households, attendants often recorded dreams, interpreting them for health, emotional balance, or even political insight. Some herbs, like chamomile or poppy, were chosen not only for their calming effects, but also for their reputed influence on dreams. Valerian root was believed to ease both body and mind, subtly guiding the sleeper toward peaceful visions. Rituals played an equally important role. Even simple acts, scattering flower petals across bedding, placing protective amulets near the head, or quietly offering a sip of warm herbal tea served as psychological cues. While modern audiences might consider these practices superstitious, they demonstrate a sophisticated understanding, reassurance, ritual, and environmental consistency profoundly shape the mind's transition into sleep. Bathing remained a cornerstone of nightly preparation. The warm water, infused with fragrant oils, relaxed muscles and eased tension. Gentle massage promoted circulation, while attentive attendance ensured comfort and smooth transitions between activity and rest. For children and young heirs, baths were shortened, elixirs were milder, and additional care was provided to ensure safety and comfort. Even modest households adapted these principles pragmatically, understanding that a warm wash and careful bedding could dramatically improve rest. Environmental control was subtle yet critical. Curtains softened incoming moonlight. Lamps were dimmed gradually. The sounds of the city were tempered with fountains, soft rustling leaves, or even the quiet hum of musical instruments in some villas. Temperature was monitored to maintain optimal comfort. The Romans recognized that sleep was a fragile equilibrium, sensitive to light, sound, temperature, and texture. Their attention to these details ensured that the transition to sleep was gentle and restorative.
Philosophical thought intertwined with practical preparation. Stoic teachings emphasized balance, moderation, and attentiveness to bodily needs. Epicurean philosophy encouraged calm, pleasure in moderation, and avoidance of excess. Sleep, therefore, was not a passive state, but a cultivated equilibrium, aligning mind, body, and environment. Overindulgence or neglect disrupted this balance. Careful rituals preserved it. Observation and adaptation were continuous processes. Attendants noted subtle movements, shifts in breathing, and signs of restlessness. Adjustments were made quietly, repositioning a pillow, adding a blanket, or offering a sip of herbal infusion. Dreams were observed and interpreted, providing feedback for refining routines and interventions. This attentive approach reflects an early understanding of sleep as an active, delicate process requiring ongoing care. The Romans also appreciated the psychological dimension of sleep. Rituals, predictable routines, and sensory cues created reassurance, reducing anxiety and promoting relaxation. Even small details, the scent of herbs, the temperature of the room, the arrangement of bedding, had a cumulative effect on the mind's transition into rest. Modern psychology confirms what the Romans intuited centuries ago. Predictable routines, sensory moderation, and calming cues are essential to restorative sleep. Social context influenced sleep practices as well. Elite households employed attendants and apothecaries to monitor routines, while soldiers and common citizens adapted the principles with simpler interventions. A soldier in a distant outpost might rely on a warm mat, a sip of herbal tea, and careful bedding, demonstrating that restorative sleep was valued and cultivated across social classes. Even modest adjustments could significantly improve rest, illustrating the universality of these principles. Dream content remained culturally significant. Pleasant dreams were interpreted as signs of physical and mental equilibrium. Disturbing dreams prompted adjustments to bedtime routines, herbal infusions, or environmental cues. Philosophers and attendants sometimes acted as interpreters, linking subjective mental experience with practical measures to optimize sleep. This integration of mind and body underscores the Romans' sophisticated approach to rest, both scientific and cultural, practical and philosophical.
Diet and daily rhythm complemented these practices. Evening meals were light, avoiding overindulgence. Vigorous activity ended earlier in the day. Baths and herbal elixirs were timed to enhance relaxation. These habits reflect an intuitive understanding of what modern science would call circadian alignment, demonstrating that the Romans carefully orchestrated daily life to maximize restorative rest. Even the tactile environment was finely considered. Bedding layers, pillow arrangement, and blanket weight were tailored to individual comfort. Fabrics were chosen for texture, warmth, and softness. The Romans understood that discomfort, even slight, could disturb the fragile state of sleep. Attention to tactile comfort was as integral as herbs, baths, or sound in guiding the body toward rest.
By midnight, the cumulative effect of these interventions was evident. The residents of Rome, elite, children, soldiers, and citizens alike, were immersed in restorative sleep. Minds were calm, bodies relaxed, and dreams navigated without disruption. Even simple measures, applied consistently, created profound effects on sleep quality. The legacy of these practices resonates today. Modern sleep science confirms many Roman intuitions: consistent routines, calming scents, comfortable bedding, gentle light, and predictable environmental cues enhance sleep quality. Romans, through observation, ritual, and careful experimentation, cultivated an understanding of sleep that remains remarkably relevant. As dawn approached, the streets of Rome remained quiet, yet the results of attentive preparation were apparent. Citizens awoke restored, bodies energized, minds clear, and spirits calm. Sleep, cultivated with care and intelligence, fulfilled its dual purpose: restoration and balance. The Roman sleep pharmacy was not merely a collection of remedies. It was a system integrating environment, ritual, observation, and philosophy, a holistic approach to well-being. In reflecting on these practices, one sees a timeless lesson. Restorative sleep requires deliberate preparation. Herbs, baths, environmental adjustments, attention to sensory input, and mindful routines can transform the quality of rest. Romans understood that sleep is fragile and that even minor disturbances can compromise its restorative effects. Their attention to detail across social classes and contexts demonstrate a profound, enduring insight into human needs.
As night continued to drape over Rome, the attention to sleep among the city's elite became increasingly elaborate. For wealthy patricians, sleep was not a mere physiological need, but a cultivated art, an intersection of comfort, ritual, and observation. Every element, from herbs to baths, bedding to ambient noise, was carefully managed to ensure optimal rest. The lives of Roman elites were punctuated by the meticulous orchestration of nightly routines. Baths were a central feature, often drawn in marble rooms warmed by underfloor hypocaust systems. Oils, lavender, chamomile, myrtle were added, both for fragrance and muscle relaxation. Attendants monitored temperature, pouring water with deliberate care and applying oils with skillful hands. Even minor adjustments, a pillow slightly repositioned, a blanket folded just so, were significant, ensuring that each bather transitioned smoothly from the day's activity to restorative rest. Herbal elixirs complemented these baths. Valerian root, poppy, chamomile, and mint were carefully measured and administered, sometimes with honey or warm wine to improve taste and absorption. Timing was crucial. Taken too early, the effect could be diminished. Too late, and it might disrupt sleep cycles. Attendants observed reactions, subtly adjusting mixtures according to individual constitution, health, or temperament. Sleep in elite households was both art and careful science. Beyond physical comfort,
The psychological dimension was central. Dreams were valued as reflections of temperament, potential decisions, and emotional state. Elite families often employed philosophers or attendants to interpret these nightly visions. Some herbs were believed to encourage positive dreams. Flower arrangements, amulets, or small charms were placed strategically to ward off nightmares. While these rituals might seem superstitious today, they provided reassurance, comfort, and a subtle influence on the mind's state, demonstrating that Romans understood the psychological impact of ritual. Children and heirs received tailored attention. Shorter baths, gentler elixirs, and carefully arranged bedding ensured both safety and comfort. Dream content was monitored as part of character development, with attendants noting reactions and subtle cues. The nurturing of youthful sleep demonstrates the Romans' recognition of rest as formative, shaping habits, temperament, and health from an early age.
Even outside elite households, sleep principles were adapted. Soldiers on distant campaigns, merchants traveling through bustling towns, and artisans in modest apartments employed simplified versions. A warm mat, a sip of herbal infusion, careful bedding, and attention to quiet or light. While resources differed, the underlying recognition remained constant. Restorative sleep is essential and can be optimized through careful preparation. Environmental control remained a key factor. Lamps were dimmed gradually, curtains softened moonlight, and soft sounds, flowing water, rustling leaves, faint breezes, provided a calming backdrop. Temperature was carefully monitored. Too warm or too cold could disrupt sleep. The Romans understood that sleep was sensitive to these variables, and that careful management could dramatically enhance rest. Philosophical principles reinforced these practices. Stoicism emphasized balance and attentiveness to bodily needs, while Epicurean thought encouraged calm and moderation. Sleep was regarded not as indulgence, but as cultivated equilibrium, where mind and body met in harmony. Overindulgence was discouraged, as was neglect. Both disrupted balance. Rituals, environmental attention, and observation preserved equilibrium, shaping restorative sleep into an intentional practice rather than a passive state. Observation and adaptation were ongoing. Attendants watched for subtle signs of restlessness, adjusting bedding, modifying herbal elixirs, or refining room temperature. Even minor interventions, repositioning a pillow, adding a blanket, or quietly adjusting lighting, demonstrated a sophisticated understanding. Sleep is delicate, and attentiveness ensures restoration. Diet and daily routine complemented sleep preparation. Evening meals were light, avoiding heavy or spicy foods. Strenuous activity concluded earlier in the day. Baths and elixirs were timed for optimal effect. This careful orchestration demonstrates an intuitive awareness of circadian rhythms, guiding the body to maximize rest. Modern research confirms that similar principles, routine, light, temperature, and diet, significantly influence sleep quality. Social and psychological factors also shaped sleep. Wealthy Romans often took comfort in ritualized routines, trusting attendants, philosophers, and household structures to ensure safety and calm. Such reassurance,
combined with environmental cues, created a predictable, soothing framework, reducing anxiety and promoting relaxation. Even small interventions, herbs, pillows, blankets, or flower arrangements, had cumulative effects on the quality of rest.
Dreams continued to play a cultural role. Pleasant dreams were interpreted as signs of balance. Disturbing dreams prompted adjustments to elixirs or environment. Philosophers and attendants sometimes recorded these experiences, linking subjective mental states with practical interventions. This integration of psychology, ritual, and environmental management reflects a surprisingly advanced understanding of the interplay between mind and body. By the late hours of night, the results of these elaborate practices became evident. Citizens awoke refreshed, minds clear, bodies relaxed, and spirits balanced. Sleep had fulfilled its dual purpose, restoration and equilibrium. The Roman sleep pharmacy, through attentive care, herbs, baths, and ritual, transcended mere practicality, becoming a systematic approach to well-being. Even minor details were considered significant. The texture of bedding, the weight of blankets, and the arrangement of pillows influenced sleep quality. Attendants adjusted these factors subtly, responding to slight movements or signs of discomfort. This meticulous attention demonstrates the Romans' recognition of sleep as fragile and complex, requiring deliberate orchestration. The universality of these principles, whether in elite villas, modest homes, or military camps, underscores a fundamental Roman understanding. Sleep is essential, delicate, and optimizable. Proper rest maintained physical health, supported mental clarity, and ensured emotional balance. Herbs, baths, careful environmental adjustments, and attentive observation combined to create an experience that was restorative, deliberate, and culturally significant. As dawn approached, the city remained quiet, yet alive with the evidence of these nightly rituals. Citizens awoke restored, prepared to engage with daily life. The Roman approach to sleep, blending environment, ritual, philosophy, and observation, ensured not only rest, but the continuity of health, temperament, and social stability. Through centuries, these lessons remain relevant. Modern readers can appreciate the effectiveness of structured routines, attention to environmental cues, calming rituals, and the integration of sensory experience into nightly preparation. Romans recognized what contemporary science now confirms. Sleep is an orchestrated, active process requiring balance, consistency, and attentiveness. As Rome slept under the faint glow of moonlight, the city's attentive approach to sleep remained quietly profound. In elite households, attendants moved like shadows, ensuring that every detail of nightly preparation was observed and optimized. Sleep, for the Romans, was not passive. It was a carefully managed, deliberate process combining ritual, observation, and environmental control. Attendants were central to this process.
They watched breathing, posture, and small movements for signs of restlessness or discomfort. Pillows were adjusted, blankets folded or added, lamps dimmed or repositioned, and herbal infusions offered when necessary. Even the smallest interventions could significantly improve sleep quality, highlighting the Romans' sophisticated understanding of rest as a delicate equilibrium. Herbs continued to play a crucial role. Chamomile, valerian root, poppy, and mint were staples, carefully prepared in teas or elixirs. Honey or warm wine was sometimes added to enhance flavor and absorption. Timing was key. Taken too early, the effects might fade before bedtime. Too late, and the sleeper could awaken groggy. Observant attendants fine-tuned dosages, reflecting an empirical approach to relaxation that balanced sensory, psychological, and physical needs. Baths remained an essential part of nightly preparation. Warm water infused with fragrant oils soothed muscles and promoted relaxation. Gentle massage improved circulation, while the careful attention of attendants ensured comfort. For children and heirs, shorter baths and milder elixirs were administered, balancing safety and efficacy. Even in simpler households or military camps, practical adaptations, warm mats, herbal infusions, quiet spaces, applied these same principles, demonstrating the universality of Roman sleep knowledge. Environmental management complemented these practices. Curtains softened moonlight, lamps emitted gentle illumination, and subtle sounds like fountains, breezes, or rustling leaves created a calming backdrop. Temperature was carefully controlled. Rooms that were too hot or too cold disrupted sleep, while moderate warmth facilitated relaxation. Romans recognized that sleep was a finely tuned equilibrium, sensitive to both internal and external factors.
Dreams remained culturally and psychologically significant. Pleasant dreams were interpreted as signs of balance and well-being. Disturbing dreams prompted adjustments to environment, routine, or herbal preparations. Some households employed philosophers or attendants as interpreters, bridging subjective mental experiences with practical measures to optimize rest. This integration of observation, ritual, and interpretation illustrates an early understanding of mind-body interplay during sleep. Dietary considerations were carefully timed. Evening meals were light, avoiding overindulgence, while strenuous activity concluded earlier in the day. Baths and herbal infusions were scheduled to align with natural circadian rhythms, guiding the body into optimal readiness for sleep. Modern sleep science confirms the effectiveness of similar routines, demonstrating that Romans had intuited principles that remain relevant today. Sensory engagement was subtle yet comprehensive. Smell, touch, sound, and light were orchestrated to create calm. Fragrant oils and herbs influenced relaxation. Bedding textures were chosen for comfort, and lamps softened the visual environment. And gentle, consistent sounds created a stable auditory backdrop.
Each sense was managed to guide the mind and body into restorative rest. Observation extended to the psychological dimension. Rituals, predictability, and reassurance reduced anxiety, enhanced calm, and prepared the mind for restorative sleep. Even minor details, the placement of pillows, the weight of blankets, the careful pouring of an herbal infusion, had cumulative effects. The Romans recognized that these subtleties could profoundly influence sleep quality and mental balance. Children and heirs remained a focus of specialized attention. Dream content was monitored, bathing routines adjusted, and elixirs fine-tuned to promote comfort and safety. Such care reflects an understanding of sleep's formative role in development, shaping habits, temperament, and emotional resilience. Across social classes, principles were adapted pragmatically. Soldiers on distant campaigns relied on warm mats, herbal teas, and quiet spaces. Merchants and artisans in modest apartments applied similar measures. The universality of these practices underscores a fundamental Roman insight. Restorative sleep is essential, delicate, and improvable through careful attention.
By the late hours of night, the cumulative effects of these interventions were evident. Citizens, whether in villas or simple apartments, experienced deeper, more restorative sleep. Minds were calm, bodies relaxed, and dreams navigated with minimal disturbance. Even simple interventions applied consistently. Herbs, baths, quiet spaces, and attentive observation produced remarkable results, reflecting the Romans' sophisticated approach to rest. The philosophical dimension reinforced these practices. Stoic emphasis on balance and attentiveness, combined with Epicurean promotion of calm and moderate pleasure, framed sleep as a cultivated state rather than indulgence. Overindulgence or neglect disrupted equilibrium. Careful rituals preserved it. Sleep, therefore, became a deliberate, intentional, and culturally significant practice, bridging mind, body, and environment. By dawn, the city's quiet stillness shifted into activity, but the effects of these carefully orchestrated nights remained. Citizens awoke refreshed, their bodies revitalized, minds clear, and spirits balanced. The Roman sleep pharmacy, through herbs, baths, environmental control, rituals, and observation, achieved a dual purpose: restorative rest and maintenance of equilibrium. Even minor tactile details contributed. Bedding layers, pillow arrangement, and blanket weight were subtly adjusted to ensure comfort. Attendants responded to small movements or changes in posture, demonstrating acute awareness of the fragility of sleep. This meticulous attention highlights the Romans' understanding that restoration is not passive. It requires deliberate orchestration. The universality of these principles, applied across wealth and status, demonstrates a profound understanding of human needs.
Whether in elite villas, modest apartments, or distant military camps, the same principles, herbs, baths, environmental control, and observation enhanced rest. Proper sleep preserved physical health, mental clarity, and emotional equilibrium, illustrating the enduring wisdom of the Roman approach. In reflecting on these practices, one sees a timeless lesson. Restorative sleep requires attention, ritual, and care. Herbs, baths, environmental management, and consistent routines transform the quality of rest. Romans recognized that sleep is fragile and can be improved through careful observation and thoughtful intervention. Their approach remains relevant, highlighting the enduring intersection of culture, philosophy, and human physiology in the pursuit of rest.
As the city of Rome lay under the soft glow of the moon, the culmination of centuries of careful observation and ritualized practice became clear. Sleep, for the Romans, was far more than a passive necessity. It was a cultivated art. From the intricate use of herbs and oils to precise environmental management, from attentive observation by devoted attendants to subtle philosophical guidance, each element of rest was carefully orchestrated. By the late hours of night, the benefits of these practices were evident across households, villas, and modest apartments. Minds were calm, bodies relaxed, and dreams flowed without disruption. Even the simplest interventions, warm baths, herbal infusions, gentle dim lighting, and carefully arranged bedding, created restorative effects. For the elites whose lives were intertwined with public expectation, political maneuvering, and social obligation, sleep offered a sanctuary, a time when control could be delicately ceded to observation, ritual, and environmental design. Attendants played a critical role in maintaining this equilibrium. Their duties extended far beyond passive supervision. They monitored breathing patterns, subtle muscle tension, and dream content. Adjustments were made quietly, a pillow repositioned, a blanket added, a lamp adjusted, or a sip of herbal tea offered. These interventions were small, unobtrusive, and profoundly effective, reflecting the Romans' nuanced understanding that sleep is a fragile, dynamic state, easily influenced by minor variables. Herbs remained a cornerstone of Roman sleep culture. Valerian root, chamomile, mint, and poppy were carefully prepared in teas or infused in baths. Honey or warm wine was often added to enhance taste and facilitate absorption. Timing and dosage were critical. Administered too early, the sedative effect might diminish. Too late, and the sleeper could awaken drowsy or disoriented. In this way, the Romans blended empirical observation with tradition, creating a proto-pharmacology of rest. Bathing rituals were equally central. Heated water, infused with calming oils, relaxed muscles and soothed tension. Gentle massage, careful pouring of water, and tactile attention from attendants ensured smooth transitions from activity to rest. For children and young heirs, shorter baths and milder herbal infusions balanced safety and efficacy, demonstrating the Romans' appreciation of rest as both restorative and formative.
Environmental orchestration was subtle yet deliberate. Curtains modulated moonlight, lamps provided soft illumination, and carefully arranged sounds, flowing water, breezes, rustling leaves, created a stable auditory backdrop. Temperature was maintained at a moderate level. Too warm or too cold could disturb sleep. Romans intuitively understood that sleep is highly sensitive to these sensory variables and that careful management could enhance restorative potential. Philosophy guided sleep as much as ritual. Stoic thought emphasized moderation, balance, and attentiveness to the body, while Epicurean philosophy encouraged calm, measured pleasure, and avoidance of excess. Sleep, therefore, was considered an intentional, cultivated state rather than a passive indulgence. Overindulgence or neglect disrupted equilibrium. Careful attention preserved it. Dreams were interpreted and nurtured. Pleasant dreams signaled balance, while disturbing dreams prompted adjustments to herbal infusions, bedding, or environmental cues. Some households employed philosophers or attendants as interpreters, linking subjective mental experience with practical interventions. This early recognition of the mind-body connection reflects sophisticated psychological insight centuries ahead of its time. Dietary timing complemented these practices. Evening meals were light, avoiding heavy or spicy foods. Vigorous activity concluded earlier in the day, while baths and herbal teas were timed for optimal effect. This careful orchestration demonstrates an intuitive understanding of circadian principles. The body responds to consistent routines, moderate activity, and gradual sensory cues. Modern research confirms the efficacy of these principles. Attention to tactile comfort remained crucial. Bedding, pillows, and blankets were carefully arranged to provide support and maintain warmth. Even minor adjustments, a shift of a pillow, the addition of a blanket, could profoundly influence sleep quality. Romans recognized that restorative sleep is sensitive to physical details and that attentive intervention ensured optimal rest. Across social classes, the principles of restorative sleep were adapted. Soldiers in distant outposts, merchants traveling through bustling towns, and artisans in modest apartments applied simplified versions: a warm mat, a sip of herbal infusion, quiet space, and careful bedding. This universality highlights the Romans' understanding that sleep is essential, delicate, and improvable through observation, routine, and environment.
The subtle integration of ritual, sensory management, herbal pharmacology, and philosophical guidance produced a restorative effect that was both physical and mental. Sleep restored the body, balanced the mind, and prepared individuals for the demands of the day. Even minor disruptions were mitigated by these careful routines, demonstrating the Romans' sophisticated awareness that restorative sleep is an active, managed process rather than a passive occurrence. By dawn, the city's gentle quiet shifted to activity, yet the effects of these nightly practices persisted. Citizens awoke refreshed, bodies energized, and minds clear. Sleep had fulfilled its dual purpose: physiological restoration and mental equilibrium. The Roman sleep pharmacy, through baths, herbs, sensory orchestration, and attentive observation, provided a holistic approach to well-being, blending cultural, psychological, and empirical insights into the simple act of rest. Even today, the principles remain relevant. Modern science validates the Romans' intuition. Consistent routines, sensory moderation, calming rituals, and careful attention to environment significantly improve sleep quality. Rome's approach was not mere superstition or indulgence. It was deliberate, empirical, and attentive, a model for cultivating restorative rest that transcends centuries. In reflecting on these practices, one sees that sleep is both fragile and essential. It requires deliberate preparation, sensory awareness, and thoughtful intervention. Herbs, baths, rituals, environmental control, attentive observation, and philosophical grounding combined to create a system that ensured restoration, balance, and well-being. The Romans recognized that sleep is a cultivated state, delicate, deliberate, and profoundly human. Thus, the legacy of the Roman sleep pharmacy endures. Its lessons, attention to detail, consistency, sensory orchestration, ritual, and observation remain profoundly applicable. Restorative sleep is not accidental. It is crafted. By integrating environmental, sensory, dietary, and psychological factors, the Romans created an enduring model for human rest. And in every quiet moment, when the city lies still and the body surrenders to darkness, one can glimpse the subtle art and gentle science of sleep as the ancients understood it: timeless, intentional, and profoundly restorative.